Hello and welcome to today's exploring session with the Beyond Shakespeare project. Today we are going to be reading the final part of Thomas Heywood's The Iron Age Part 2, or I call it, not he, the Iliad and its aftermath. So, in our previous exploring session for this play, pretty much all of the Trojans are dead except Aeneas and his friends, but they don't matter because they don't come up. And Agamemnon is going home, where things are about to get very complicated. We have a character not known to me, at least, from Greek tragedy, who is making them even more complicated. So, we've really enjoyed Thomas Heywood's The Iron Age Part 1 and Part 2. I hope that this final section of Part 2 lives up to our previous expectations. There are quite a lot of characters and there's quite a lot of plot about to be crammed into an act and a half. So, make yourself a cup of tea and come along for the ride. If you have any comments or questions, please comment below. And don't forget, we've got lots and lots of other videos, including of the rest of the Ages plays by Heywood and lots of other early modern plays, as well as a podcast and a Patreon. Like, comment, subscribe, give us some money too. Oh, I didn't say that. Joining me today for the final exploring session on Thomas Heywood's The Iron Age Part 2 is this marvelous group of readers. Reading Helen and Ulysses today.
Hi, I'm Eric, and I will be duplicitous in all things.
Reading Diomed.
I'm Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Pyrrhus.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading Orestes.
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Menelaus.
Hello, I'm Helen, and I'm in Hull, and I'm playing Menelaus, who is married to another Helen, but quite different.
Reading Clytemnestra.
Sarah Blake, ready to get her stabby on in Germany.
Reading Egistus.
Me, Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Cethus.
Lois, retired academic living in London.
Reading Agamemnon and Hermione.
I'm Gina, Moravec, podcast producer and voice actor in Northeast US.
Reading Sinon and Pylades.
Hello, I'm Lynn. I'm a college composition teacher, and I am in the Northwest United States.
And reading Thersites, a lord, and a guard.
Hello, Dan, actor based in Montpellier, France.
And I'm Aliki Chapple. I'm your guest host today, standing in for Robert Crighton. And we are beginning in Act 4 and what we call Scene 2.
Well met on land, kind brother. We are now victorious. Let's be proud on't.
Thou sayest true. We are conquerors in our basest cowardice. We had not been here else.
Valiant Hector, Achilles, Troilus, Paris, Ajax too. They're all fallen. We stand.
Yes, and will still, when all the Grecian princes that survive are cramped and hamstringed.
Wast thou not seasick, brother?
Horribly, and feared in the rough seas to have disgorged my heart, and there to have fed haddocks.
Trojans were fellows in all their fury to be parleyed with, but with the tempests, gusts, and hurricanes, the warring winds, the bellows, rocks, and fires, there was no talking. These few times we prayed, the gods would hear no reason.
'Twas because the billows with their roaring and the winds did with their whistling keep them from their ears. But now all's hushed. Could we find time to pray, they might find time to hear us.
Shall we be spectators of the royal interview between the king and queen?
10 years divorced should challenge a kind meeting. Let's observe the form and state of this court compliment, thing I never did trade with. Hark, loud music gives warning of their coming.
Loud music. Enter at one door Agamemnon, Ulysses, Diomed, Pyrrhus, Menelaus, Sinon and Thersites falling into their train. At the other, Egistus, Clytemnestra, Cethus, Orestes, Pylades, Hermione, Electra, etc.
Unto our country and our household gods, we are at length returned, trophied with honors, with choice subversion and rich Asia spoils. This is a sacred day.
Dutch Troy had once.
Unto the gods we'll sacrifice.
So Priam fell before the holy altar.
This city is not Troy.
Where Helen treads, I hold the place no better.
See our queen, Orestes and Electra, for our sake. Princes of Greece, dine them your best salutes, dear Clytemnestra.
Royal king and husband.
After their salute, all the rest compliment as strangers, but especially Pyrrhus and Orestes.
What's he that kneels so close unto our queen?
Egistus, and your servant.
He was young when we at first set sail from Lewis Gulf, and now grown from my remembrance. We shall find fit time to search him further.
Mark you that?
Yes, and it touched me deeply.
Our sister and this young Hermione, daughter to us, and Helen.
Pretty puppy of such a common brack.
Young Neoptolemus, this is the lady promised you at Troy for your great service done there. She's your own. Freely embrace her then.
I see we are like to have a jolly kindred.
Pyrrhus, enjoy her whom I have in contract.
Beauteous lady, the greatest ambition Pyrrhus aims at now is how to know you farther. Have been so mighty to revenge the wrongs of my fair mother, can from Hermione challenge no less than welcome.
Oh, you gods! Pyrrhus, thou wert more safe in burning Troy with horror, fury, blood, fires, foes about thee, than in my father's court.
Another column on which to build my slaughters. Patience, Prince. This is no time for braves and menaces. I further shall instruct you.
I have done.
See now, the two queens meet and smack in public that oft have kissed in corners.
Thersites, thou art grown a monster, a strange thing scarce known mongst soldiers' wives and daughters.
They are two sisters.
Yes, and the two king brothers royally between them corrupted. Or
We are too loud.
Princes of Greece, since we have done a duty to see our general midst his people safe, and after many dreadful wars abroad, in peace at home, 'tis fit we should disperse unto our several countries instantly. I purpose for Aetolia, where my queen waits my coming.
Not King Diomed, till you have seen Messiani's pomp and state, and amplest royalty expressed at full, both tasted of our feasts and princely gifts. The fair Aegail, who hath so long forborne your presence, will not, I presume, deny to spare you to us some few days, to add to the year's number, though not as general yet, will I lay on you a friend's command, which must not be denied.
Great Agamemnon with me was ever powerful. I am his.
And now, fair sister, welcome back from Troy. Be ever henceforth Spartas.
Your great care in my enforced absence, gracious queen, and expressed unto my dear Hermione, hath much obliged me to you. My fate, how swift time runs! Orestes grown a man, whom I left in the cradle. Young Electra then, as I take it, scarce born, and now grown ripe, even ready for a husband.
In whose absence, if but one handsome sweetheart come in place, she'll not turn tail for it, if she do but take after mine old aunt Helen.
Enter a lord.
The great and solemn preparation of the court, state, and glory, mighty princes, attend for you within.
All are consecrated unto your royal welcomes. Enter then, we'll feast like earthly gods, or godlike men.
Loud music, they possess the stage, all in a state. Cethus stayeth behind.
My brain about again, for thou hast found a new project now to work on, and 'tis here. Orestes hath received Hermione from Clytemnestra's hand. Her soul is his, and he her genius, two combined in one. Yet she is by the father's oath conferred on Pyrrhus, which shall breed a stormy flaw, ne'er to be pierced again, but by the deaths of the two hopeful youths. Perhaps the hazard of all these kings, if my revenge strike home, of that at leisure. But the bloody stage on which to act, general, this night is thine. Thou liest down mortal, who must rise divine.
Enter Orestes to Cethus, music and healthing within.
O Cethus, what's this music unto me, that are composed of discords? What are healths to him that is struck heart-sick? All these joys whose leaders seem to pierce against the roofs of these high structures, to him that is struck down halfway below the center.
Were you lower, yet here's a hand can raise you, deeper cast than to the lowest abysm. It lies in me to advance you to the height of happiness, where you shall live eternal from the reach of any human malice.
Hadst thou seen her, in whose breast my heart was paradised, kissed, courted, and embraced?
By Pyrrhus.
Him, what passionate insidiating looks he cast on her, as if in scorn of me. Shall he enjoy my birthright, or inherit where I am heir apparent? Shall he usurp or plead my interest where I am possessed? Rule where I reign, where I am stated, sit, brave me in my peculiar sovereignty?
He must not, shall not.
Show me to depose the proud usurper then.
Prince, make it my charge. In the meantime, from your distracted form, exile all discontent. Let not least rage reign in your eye or harshness in your tongue. Smooth waters are still deepest. Wait on the king, and be no stranger to your mother's eye, or foreign to your kindred. The feast spent, and night with it, the morrow shall beget project of more import, scarce thought on now.
I build upon thy counsel.
Exit Orestes.
Which hath proved firm as a rock, still constant and unmoved.
Enter Egistus.
What? Cethus here? Why, no such matter now, no cause of fear or at your least suspicion.
Your reason?
Tush, presume it, we are safe.
Observe it, they are still securest whom the devil drives to ruin.
Hark their healths carousing to the general's victories, in all thy heart of joy and fire of wine, no spark of jealousy, all the argument of their discourse, what they have done at Troy, still health on health, and the great general so far from seeming to have least distaste, that in all affable terms he courts his queen. Nay, more, cuts off all banquet ceremonies to hasten his bed pleasures, as if time's distance betwixt his board and Pylades seemed more tedious than all his 10 years' siege.
Oh, go, lost man, sink on firm ground, be shipwrecked in a calm. These healths are to your ruin, his revenge. Hath not Egistus read of a disease where men die laughing? Others that have drunk poison instead of cordials perish so? To die is nothing, since 'tis all men die, but wretchedly to suffer, fall unpitied? Unpitied, nay, derided, mocked and cursed, to die as a base traitor and a thief, the adulterer of his sovereign's bed, the poison of the Atreides family, and scandal of his issue. So to die?
Egistus will prevent. He by this hand must fall, for whom all Asia could not stand.
The banquet is broke up. Sleep calls to rest, and midnight's hour for murder still shows best.
Exit. Wow, there has been a lot happening. Okay, so Agamemnon comes home. Who's that guy, Egistus? Oh, I've completely forgotten about him. I'll get to know him later. Sister! Sister! Wait a minute, says Orestes.
Yeah.
This guy's gonna be my girlfriend? Pyrrhus seems quite pleased. Okay, and Cethus is absolutely determined to make sure all of his plots run according to plan. He's even got something new to plot about. Fantastic. Thoughts about this very long and interesting scene, please.
Well,
Lynn?
Well, that Cethus is quite the shit stirrer, isn't he? And then, you know, fate or rules, but we hadn't really heard anything about there being any kind of rivalry for Hermione's hand. And then Pyrrhus shows up and goes, "Hey, cutie, I'm the son of Achilles," you know, and then so that plays right into Cethus's plan to just basically undermine this whole family. That's unfortunate.
Egistus was really easily soothed by Agamemnon's smiling demeanor and willingness to get drunk and boast about his exploits.
Yeah.
Nothing else to say? So much happened. Lois, please.
Well, you were commenting on Egistus. I mean, I think in most versions, he does come across as kind of a weak villain, you know. It's Clytemnestra that's the brains of the outfit. And I mean, here, this is sort of an example of it. Yeah, everybody's being really nice to me. Oh, I'm so happy. You know.
I'll get away with it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine anything going wrong.
Totally go wrong. Yeah.
Thoughts? So much happened, you guys. Eric, is that a hand? Yeah. And Elizabeth.
I did like how you start the scene with Thersites and Sinon sort of complaining about the voyage over. Sort of, yeah, it was shit, wasn't it? Oh yeah, I was throwing up all the time, man. But hey, we're alive. We made it. And like, sort of, aren't they idiots for dying in the war? And it's like.
And they do continue their acerbic commentary throughout all of the public stuff, which is fun.
Yeah, I feel like they should be smoking a joint in the corner. I don't know.
Drinking a beer, you know.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you were going to say something, and then Lois?
Yeah, just briefly. I was just thinking that Cethus has taken on the Sinon role of being the like dastardly plotter, soliloquizing and giving his asides and like plotting his evil deeds. I was wondering how interesting it is that transition has taken place from the first part of the text to the third. That Cethus has become the kind of Sinon's job's done now. He's destroyed Troy, and now it's Cethus that's kind of stirring the pot.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I was going to say, except that, I mean, Sinon took over from Thersites. I mean, it seems, you know, Heywood starts out with one villain, then, oh, well, if one villain's good, two are better. Now we've got a third. I mean, where is this going to lead? I think either there were a lot of actors that kept saying, I want to play a villain, or new stars kept joining the company. I don't know.
Right. So, yeah.
Lynn.
Or Briony?
Or Lynn and Briony. One.
Okay, because I've talked already. Yeah, that's that observation that we have, you know, overlapping villains who take over from one another. But it's also kind of escalating because Thersites was just sort of a shit talker, you know, and Sinon was more active. I mean, he got stuff done. You know, the horse was his idea, and he was the one that is such a good dissembler that he convinced the Trojans to bring the horse into Troy. But Troy is, after all, Greece's enemy. He's kind of a horrible person, but he did what he did in service of the cause of his country. And Cethus is a bastard, and the people he wants to take down are his fellow Greeks. So it's like it's sort of like escalating bad guys. That makes sense.
Yeah, That's a good point. Briony, then Alan.
Yeah, I just really liked the loud music stage directions that we had, and just wanted to say in my head, it was War by Edwin Starr that they were blasting out.
Helen.
Yeah.
No, Alan. Sorry, not Helen.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm still having difficulty following this sort of new character, this Cethus guy, because we got no backstory for him at all, really, emerged.
Well,
He told
Yeah.
us in the previous session that
But it was hard to follow.
yeah, that because Agamemnon wanted to be commander-in-chief of the Greek forces, his brother got framed as a spy and executed, and therefore Agamemnon and his whole house must suffer. Eric.
I was going to say that technically Thersites isn't quite so benign as because he did sort of, well, not drive Ajax to suicide, but I mean it was kind of, yeah, he did kind of pile on the shit till Ajax went, yeah, how dare they, and sort of, yeah, my honor is besmirched, I cannot live anymore, and then kills himself.
Yeah.
Rachael.
No, I was gonna say there's I think if we get more villains, I think we could have some sort of Marston-esque comedy on our hands, where everybody's so dastardly that it's almost over the top in a certain way, and it could be humorous, and maybe depending on how production would want to play it, you could play it straight, or you could play some of the humor in some of the scenes up a little more after the end of the Trojan War to bring the mood of the audience back up, and because we've still got more. This might be a part where you want the comedy to be up a little more, because we've still got some time left in the play, and if you want that shock to come back to the audience, you have to throw them off the scent, I guess, of tragedy.
Bit of cynical humor before the next bloodbath. Eric.
I was going to say that technically what I found interesting was the way Helen and Clytemnestra interact. It's like minimal interaction, sort of like it's like they don't even want to talk to each other kind of thing. And that's the impression I get. I don't know, just by the fact that they exchange just one paragraph of text or something, or one section. It's like she's not seen her sister in 10 years, and the only thing she can say is thank you for looking after my daughter, and oh my god, is this your son, your daughter, kind of like, hey, let's change the subject because this is going to get really awkward very quickly. I don't know.
Yeah, Helen.
On the other hand, one of the villains, I forget which now, implies that there is something unnatural in their affection and that they are all over each other in a corner.
Was that the implication?
Oh, I've just got a dirty mind. Forget it.
He's got a dirty mind. That's why he says it.
I'm not disputing you. I genuinely didn't quite understand what he was on about. Sarah.
Yeah, I took that to mean that they were like in a corner, just like, hugging each other and catching up. And because he's just like a really icky person, he decided to interpret that a certain way. I just wanted to go back to what Eric was saying a minute ago about the Thersites, because I didn't really talk about this yesterday because I was hosting, but yesterday we had that scene where, Menelaus is all for killing Helen, and Agamemnon talks him out of it, and Thersites appears to be talking him out of it on the surface, and you can certainly interpret the text that way, but you could equally interpret it that he's actually goading him. Oh yeah, because it's fine. No one's gonna mind that you've got horns, that you're a cuckold because you're a king, and no one will dare say anything. I mean, that is, you could take that as like he's rather idiotically trying to talk him out of murdering Helen, but I actually took it the opposite way, that he was actually shit stirring on purpose to try and rile up Agamemnon into killing her. And so just to just to follow up on
Yeah.
what Eric was saying about, Thersites with Ajax, I think he's actually far more nefarious than people give him credit for. At least you could certainly play him that way, depending on how you wanted to take the character. But there is this thing of like, he was the initial shit stirrer, and he is really nefarious. And then you get Sinon, who's obviously, creates all this devastation. And now we're with Cethus or Cethus, and where is that going on? So the fact that baton has been handed on, that baton of villainy has been handed on from one to the other, it does build an expectation for the audience about where this is going to go, especially as we don't really know who Cethus is, because he's not part of the legend.
Lois, and then I think we'll move on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, that would be an interesting way of playing that scene, to have Thersites do, yeah, take her back, be a cuckold, and Agamemnon say, hey, that's a good idea, let's do it, taking it seriously. But also, I just wanted to point out that something very like that happened in Edward IV, which Heywood wrote a long time ago, when he had Richard III telling Matthew Shore, go ahead, take back your wife. The only way you can do anything for her is if you receive her again as your wife, and we will all have a good laugh at you because you're a cuckold. I mean, it's the same idea, really.
So in the next scene of Act 4, loud music, enter Egistus with his sword drawn, hideth himself in the chamber behind the bed curtains. All the kings come next in, conducting the general and his queen to their lodging. After some compliment, leave them, every one with torches, ushered to their several chambers, and so on.
Methinks this night we Clytemnestra meet at a new bridal. All attendants leave us. We now are only for bed privacies.
Great sir, I that so long have been your widow will be this night your handmaid.
You told me, Queen. Orestes with a cunning horseman grown. It pleased me much to hear it.
Greece reports no centaur can ride better.
And young Electra, and all the endowments that may best become a princess of her breeding, most complete.
It was in your long absence, all my care being my charge, that you at your return might find them to your wishes.
Thanks for that.
How cunningly he seems to carry it. But we must find prevention.
Who's without there?
Why started you?
Not all the Asian legions. No, not Hector armed with his balls of wildfire, had the power to shake me like this tremor. Is our palace less safe in Greece, amidst our subjects here, than were our tents in Asia?
Where, if not here in Clytemnestra's arms, can safety dwell?
And fair queen, it should be so.
But why, sir, cast you such suspicious eyes about your chamber? Are we not alone? Or will you tell to the private suites of night call telltale witness?
Now 'tis gone again. Shall we to rest?
So please you, royal sir.
How hard this down feels, like a monument cut out of marble. Beds resemble graves, and these, methinks, appear like winding sheets, prepared for courses.
Oh, how ominously you do presage! You much affright me, sir, in this our long-wished meeting.
All shook off. I now am armed for pleasure. You commended late one Agistus to me. Prithee, queen, of what condition is he?
They both wound him, at which there is a great thunder crack.
Tyrant this!
And I am thus his second.
Treason, murder, treason. This shows we princes are no more than men. Thanks Jove, 'tis fit when monarchs fall by treason. Thunder to all the world would show some reason.
Eyes.
The deed is done. Let's fly to some strong citadel for our more safety.
He, thus made divine, now, my Agistus, I am solely thine.
Exeunt. Wow. Well, what do we think?
Yeah, great scene.
Yeah. His bed feels like a grave to him, and the sheets are winding sheets. Briony.
That tyrant this line just it feels so current and like, you know what I mean, tyrant this. I don't know, yeah, I just wasn't ready for that.
Rachael, and then Sarah.
I was gonna say for lines that sound so modern, I was gonna say thanks for that. That it's just so, even as he's saying all this all this stuff leading up to it, you know, all this dread that he's feeling, just that it feels to some extent that he's so ignorant about how his wife feels, and he's so detached from that and unexpecting that that's where it's going to come from, that it feels almost comic the moment that she goes, when she goes and has her aside, that you could play it for comedy or you could play it straight, and he's offered us so many options, I think, in the way to play scenes so far, that's I think a great thing to have.
Sarah, then Eric.
Yes, Rachael just mentioned Clytemnestra's aside, and I find this interesting. I wanted to know what other people think of this. How cunningly he seems to carry it, but we must find prevention. I took that as an aside. It's not marked as such in the text, but I just kind of assumed it was. But I wondered who it was to. I wondered if it was to the audience, or whether it was actually to Egistus, who's presumably lurking somewhere. I couldn't work out who I was supposed to be addressing there, and I sort of changed intention halfway through the sentence, which is kind of the last thing you're supposed to do. But I thought at first she was saying it to the audience, but then I wondered actually, is she actually saying it to him? I don't know. What do people think?
I wondered if Agistus was actually under the bed and shook it, and that was
yeah,
and then it would make it really easier for her. So Eric, Briony, Alan, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I was just fascinated by the fact that I was just glad that Agamemnon did not get a long speech after he was stabbed. It's like sort of did not want a death speech from this character, but also just kind of you kind of assume that he shouts loud enough for the rest of the house to hear him, which is interesting, and just kind of there's loud music, but there isn't. I don't know, just kind of they can hear each other in the room, which is interesting. He can hear, like, he can presumably he can hear Agistus moving around or something, but also the loud music in the background. I don't know, just kind of, it's interesting how you choose to play it.
Okay, Briony, Alan, then Helen, and then I really will move on because we've got a nice big scene coming up after this.
I was just going to what Sarah was saying. I read it that the aside was probably to Egistus, because then Agamemnon sort of says, "Who's without there?" Is it, you know, almost like, "Who are you talking to?" And she's like, "Oh, what started you? What sort of you?" kind of thing, you know. And so I took it that she was like whispering to me, and he'd kind of heard it, and so, "Oh no, what are you on about? No, didn't say anything."
Alan, you had something to say?
Yeah, we were told in the stage direction at the beginning of the scene that Agistus had hidden behind the bed curtains. So logically, I mean, that could almost be Clytemnestra. Basically, this is your cue, sunshine, to do the stabby bit.
Mm-hmm. Helen?
Yeah, it's Agamemnon's last speech that fascinated me. He's stabbed. He says treason, murder, treason. And then he goes into philosophy mode. This shows we princes are no more than men. Then you get the thunder. And which he says, "Oh, thanks, Jove. That's the right thing when monarchs get killed. Thunder to all the world." And dies. I mean, it is the weirdest speech I've seen in a long time.
Hey, so Act 4, Scene 4, as we're calling it. And A noise of uproar within. Enter all the kings with other servants, half unready, as nearly started from their beds. Orestes, Hermiones, Pylades, Electra, etc.
What strange tumultuous noise is this so late to rouse us from our beds?
Prodigious sure, since 'tis confirmed by thunder.
In mine ears did never sound seem half so terrible.
Nor to your eyes as this sad object is. See great Atreides groveling.
What damned villain was author of this project?
Horrid
Horrid
sight.
Sight. Rest you all amazed, rest you amazed all, as thunder struck, and without sense or motion apoplexed, and only hear me speak. Orestes, he who, as if marbled by Medusa's head, hath not one tear to fall, or sigh to spend, till I find out the murderer, and on him inflict remarkable vengeance. For I vow, were it my father, brother, or his queen, hadst thou my weeping sister hand in it. If he, whom equal, if not ranked above, I ever did, and shall love Pylades, wert she worse, wert she whose womb did bear me, where I lay full 9 months, bedded ere I saw the sun, or the most abject traitor under heaven, their dooms were all alike, and this I vow. Now you whom this silent and speechless king hath oft commanded, this now senseless brain as oft directed, this now strengthless hand more oft protected in a war that shall be to all times example. Lend your shoulders to bear him, who hath kept you all in life. This is a black and mourning funeral rite. Deeds of this nature must be thoroughly searched, may be revenged. The gods have said 'tis good. The morning sun shall rise and blush in blood.
They bear him off with a sad and funeral march, and so forth. Explicit actus quartus. Well, thoughts, please, on the discovery of the murder, Eric?
I don't think any of them were really that sad about him dying. Although, like, I mean, like in terms of as characters, in terms of like sort of, we're told that they bear him off with the sad and funeral march, but yeah, it just kind of feels very, he died. Except Orestes, it obviously kind of is revenge.
Yeah, I just have something really microscopic that I observed. Cethus, the great, again, the great dissembler. What damned villain was author of this project, right? But another thing that's great about that line, just something really tiny, is that when he was talking with Clytemnestra and Agistus about doing this, project is a word he uses more than once, and it's a very neutral word. He doesn't say, murder or conspiracy or anything with a negative valence. It's project. And so he rats himself out a little bit here by repeating that word that doesn't have the appropriate negative valence.
That's a really interesting point. Can we talk a little bit about Orestes' speech? That was quite a long and interesting speech. No? I'm not going to do the talking. Rachel, why don't you tell us about doing it?
It was interesting. There's I don't know, I felt like the way it was written, there is a vocal shift, like so many continuing lines. Even I was just following the grammar, and the grammar might not be, might just be this script, or it might be an editor or somebody puts it in and not, Heywood's original, but there seemed to be a downshift at the beginning of a lot of the lines where you have to, a lot of that parenthetical type talking, a lot of what ifs, if this, if that. And in some way, maybe because it's like that, I think there's some ambiguity whether or not this is a prepared speech, like in the way that newspapers prepare articles for well-known people, politicians, celebrities, whatever, before, and they just leave a few things blank, how and the time. but some sort of preparation. And I mean, Orestes does say that this court was very wily to somebody, I forget who, just a few scenes before. So, I mean, maybe there is some preparedness and wiliness on his own part, because that's what it takes to survive in this court.
Oh, yeah. I love that. That like the pre-prepared obit, because Agamemnon has so many enemies and has done so many egregious things that assassination is almost inevitable, and Orestes knows that. So he's prepared to say, okay, whoever did this, even if it's my mother, I'm going to get revenge. and of course, you know, playwrights in this period are very fond of this kind of dramatic irony, that characters speak truer than they know. So maybe he doesn't know that it was his mother. But I think that would be a fascinating choice, that if he's been ready since his father came home to avenge the sort of almost inevitable assassination of his father. That's just such a fascinating take.
Lois, then Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, he's got no reason to be terribly happy about his father, since his father has just given away his fiancée to someone else. But yeah, there's a speech that Eric was asking about in the chat, and I agree that if he whom equal, if not ranked above, I ever did and shall love Pylades, doesn't look very comprehensible. I think what he's saying, you know, is if the murderer turned out to be, you know, any of these people that I care about, or even Pylades, who is at least equal, if not above, in my love to my sister, the queen, all sorts of people, I would still kill him. I mean, but it is extremely complicated. It's in fact unusually complicated for Heywood, I would have said.
Agreed. Yeah.
Sarah?
Yes, I'm finding this conversation about Agamemnon really interesting. There is a kind of callousness about it, and I did love Rachel's idea about the prepared obit. There's like, it's a very formal. It seems to be a very. I mean, okay, it doesn't have to be played that way on stage. The people could be running around screaming when they discover it, but it does on the page. It does come across as being like quite a sort of formal, not particularly emotional response to the fact that he's dead, and there could be an inevitability about it, that they're all expecting it. But on the other hand, it's just, you know, okay, yes, there's the thing of you know, he's promised, he's kind of gone back on his word about who Hermione is going to marry. Well, fair enough, but actually a lot of the stuff that makes Agamemnon really awful is not in this version. As Helen pointed out, we haven't had any mention of Iphigenia. That seems to be deliberately missing from this version. And also, we haven't had the whole subplot with Cassandra. You know, Cassandra in this version got bumped off in Troy. She hasn't been brought back. So, you know, a lot of the things, and I'm sure he did some stuff early on in part one that wasn't very edifying. But, you know, he had, from what I remember, when I compare him to people like Achilles and Pyrrhus, and to a certain extent Ajax, he's actually been like one of the least toxic Greek warriors in this play, in this version. So it's really interesting that we're getting this very kind of cold response to his murder. You know, because Heywood has deliberately, he's made choices about not making him into the villain that he could have been. He hasn't done that.
Orestes, of course, is speaking about a father he barely knows. Lois, Rachael, and did I see another hand? Dan?
Well, I was just saying that I think it's actually rather moving that after he's vowed vengeance on whoever it turns out to be, I think this now you whom this silent and speechless king hath oft commanded, this now senseless brain as oft directed, this now strengthless hand, more oft protected in a war that shall be to all times example. Lend your shoulders to bear him who hath kept you all in life. I mean, it's incredible, really. It could have been prepared. I mean, it's good stuff.
Rachael, didn't you want to say something? No. Dan, please.
It actually, to me, I thought that Rachael had read it really well, and I understood it, apart from the one phrase that had been pointed out earlier, which I hadn't unpacked myself, the one that follows, if he whom equal, if not ranked above, I ever did and shall love Pylades. I'm sure it probably makes sense in some way. The rest of it I thought followed really well, and I would say this is something that people have prodded me to say, that I said in the chat, that the punctuation, Heywood is notorious for having supposedly illegible handwriting, and anybody who's ever looked at his manuscripts would attest to that, although it is comprehensible once you get used to it. Heywood was also a notorious punctuator, had his own system going, and whoever the printer was or scribe was who transcribed this was able to make heads or tails of it because of, I mean, that was just demonstrated right now, I thought, because Rachael had read it clearly. So for the most part, our script follows it pretty much point for point in the way that it's printed the quarto, and I would say it's bringing out the poetry of Heywood's language, the way whoever had transcribed this for there. And so I'd be interested to see if there's trouble with it with other passages elsewhere, but for now I'm finding it pretty comprehensible.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just wanting to speak to what Dan, Lois, and Rachael have said about, the complexity yet the legibility of Orestes' speech. I really liked what Rachael said about the parentheticals in the speech, and I was also really impressed by the use of the word thunderstruck, which was quite literal in its meaning, and apoplexed. I thought the speech had a lot of very complex use of enjambment, which would make it quite difficult for a reader because they're kind of negotiating between the parentheses, the parentheticals, and the enjambment, which are kind of interplaced. And then you have the consonants and the assonants, which like marbled by Medusa's head, and then only hear me speak Orestes, he, and then I just thought it was a very complex speech that Rachael negotiated very well.
So that was the end of Act 4. Off we go into Act 5 then. Yeah, cool. So Act 5, Scene 1. Enter Pyrrhus, Hermione, Thersites, and Sinon.
Sweet lady, can you love?
Forbear, my lord. Can such a thing as love be once named here? Where every marble that supports this roof in emulation doth vie tears with us? Nay, where the wounds of such a mighty king have yet scarce bled their last.
Tush, fair Hermione, these sights that seem to ladies terrible are common to us soldiers, when from field returning all smeared in blood, where dukes and kings lie slain. Yet in our tents at midnight it frights not us from courting a sweet mistress.
He saith right, and noteth this how I can poetize. This his great father of his love desired, when from the slaughter of his foe retired, he doffed his cuishes and unarmed his head to tumble with her on a soft day bed. It did rejoice Briseis to embrace his bruised arms and kiss his blood-stained face. These hands which he so often did imbrue in blood of warlike Trojans whom he slew, were then employed to tickle, touch, and feel, and shake a lance that had no print of steel.
Continue in that vein. I'll feed thy muse with crayfish, prawns, and lobsters.
You brought these of purpose to abuse me.
Peace, Thersites, and Sinon, you no more.
We see by Agamemnon all are mortal, and I but show his niece, Hermione, the way of all flesh.
'Tis an easy path. The mother and the aunt had trod it both, if she had wit to follow.
Enter Ulysses, Menelaus, Diomed with others.
If it be so, Egistus is a traitor, and she no more our sister.
'Tis not possible a queen of her high birth and parentage should have such base hand in her husband's death, her husband and her sovereign.
Devil's reason could it be proved against her?
It appears so far against humanity and nature, we dare not once suspect it. But till proof explain it further, hold it in suspense.
Oh, but their sudden flight and fortifying.
These are indeed presumptions, but leave that to a most strict inquiry, even for reverence of majesty and honour to all queens. For love of us, because she was our sister, both for Orestes and Electra's sake, whose births are branded in so foul a deed, till we examine further circumstances, spare your severer censures.
'Tis a business that least concerns us, but for honour's sake and that he was our general.
What? Princely Pyrrhus, courting our fair daughter?
Yes, sir, but in a time unseasonable, even as the suit itself is.
All delay shall be cut off, and she'll be swayed by us. These royal princes, ere they leave Mycenae, shall see these nuptial rites solemnized. We'll keep our faith with Pyrrhus.
We our vows as constant to the bright Hermione. First see the royal general here interred and buried like a soldier, 'tis his due. To question of his death concerns not us. We leave it to heaven's justice and revenge. The rites performed with fair Hermione, then to our several countries each man's post. Captains disperse still when the general's lost.
Enter Cethus, Orestes, and Pylades disguised. Exeunt Pyrrhus, Menelaus, Ulysses, and Hermione.
Agistus and our mother.
Am I Cethus? Are you Orestes and this Pylades? So sure they were his murderers. This disguise will suit an act of death. Full to the life, he stands upon a strict and secure guard. I've plotted your admittance, it will take, doubt not, it cannot fail. I have cast it so.
As sent from Menelaus.
Whose name else can break through such strong guards, where fear and guilt keep hourly watch?
It is enough, I haft. And thou, the faithfulest of all friends, dear Pylades, do but assist me in my vowed revenge and enjoy fair Electra.
Next to your friendship, it is the prize I aim at. I am yours.
What slip you time and opportunity, or look you after dreams?
I am awake, and to send them to their eternal sleep. In expedition there is still success, in all delays defect. The traitor dies where he in league with all the destinies.
Exeunt Pylades and Orestes.
And 'tis a fruitful year for villainy, and I a thriving farmer. In this interim, I have more plots on foot. King Menelaus I have incensed against proud Diomed, Pyrrhus against Orestes, he against him, Ulysses without parallel for wit against them all, so that the first combustion shall burn them up to ashes. Oh, Pylades, so dear was both thy love and memory, not Helen by her whoredom caused more blood streaming from princes' breasts than Cethus shall, brother, for thine untimely funeral.
And the dastardly plot continues. Thoughts, please, about this scene.
Well, let's, if I may, we'll go back to the beginning And Sinon's like just really, really gross little poem there. He's never spoken in rhymed verse before, but he makes it's like, oh, I'll make a poem about this. And it's just gross.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm beginning to wonder if the playwright has a great deal of sympathy for women handed around as prizes.
Yeah. He's also also very meta aware, that the metaphorical arena of war was often used to talk about courtship. I mean, it was almost a cliche. So he's just sort of kicking it into the next level and kind of showing how absurd that is. That would be part of my read on that little poem, is the love is war metaphor. It's really gross when you take it far enough.
Eric. And then Rachael.
Well, we also had that in Spanish tragedy, I think, where we've got the two lovers at some point. Yeah, and well, yeah, that doesn't end well. Foreshadowing. No, just I find it interesting that Cethus says this whole thing of it's a fruitful year and I'm a thriving farmer, and there's I like sort of the play of on words of like having more plots and being a farmer, and then sort of meanwhile all this sort of chaos has been happening. He's basically told everybody to sort of that they made sure that they all hate each other, and yeah. I just like this idea.
Rachael and then Sarah.
I think the whole, even if it's a total cliche, I think the love is war kind of fits in this, because in war people die, and we know that. I think our familiarity with this story in the fallen house of Atreus is kind of like, we know that people are going to die in this, but they're going to die for love or something. Also, I was going to say, like, what a scrub Pyrrhus is, that she's in full mourning and they're trying to push her out. She doesn't even get to mourn properly, or even use the social construct of mourning as a protection against a marriage that she doesn't want. They're bugging her already, like the day after or the day of the funeral.
Yeah.
Sarah, then Lois.
Just to pick up on what Eric said about that fruitful year of villainy speech, the thing that was so striking about that as well was the fact that the language, of the thriving farmer, and what is it he's harvesting? It's destruction. It's just such a beautiful and jarring word picture that's created there. That image of all this fruitful bounty, but it's a fruitful bounty of destruction that's going to end in ashes. This is just an amazing speech there. I also just wanted to say, Aliki, I am totally with you, and but it's not an opinion that I'm coming to. I've felt it since the beginning of part one. I think the women are treated really sympathetically and interestingly in this play. They're all of them. They might not be sympathetic characters, but they're treated sympathetically in their characterization, because all of them are given complexity, and there is a lot of subtext with all of them, and there are different ways to play them, and that's just so refreshing to see it, especially in a version of the Trojan Wars. Because they quite often don't get to have that kind of complexity, but they do here.
Lois, then Helen.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering why on earth Pyrrhus brings those two guys along with him when he's wooing Hermione. I mean, she says, you brought them here to abuse me, and that's exactly what it looks like. I mean, trying to court somebody when you've got the two most cynical people in the army, both making cynical remarks about courtship. I mean, crazy.
Yeah. It's not like they sneak in and are doing these asides. He's like, Pyrrhus is like, yeah, come on, pipe down, you guys. So, yeah. What?
Yes, Helen.
I'm a bit confused by Clytemnestra here. It is, Heywood has taken away all sorts of motivations for Agamemnon's murder. All the classical ones, treading on the red carpet and all the rest of it. And as somebody said, no Iphigenia, no Cassandra. All she's got is, if I don't kill him immediately, he's going to discover that I'm having an affair with Egistus. But then the second he's dead, she and Egistus do a runner.
Yeah.
And one would have thought that her best way is to lie in the blood, screaming her head off, saying there was a strange man, while Egistus goes away very quickly, gets washed, and turns up in his dressing gown looking baffled. And they don't do this. But there's no explanation of why. I mean, they never say, oh, shit, let's run away.
It was the thunderclap that woke everybody up, you see.
It was the thunder. Yes, of course, that is an explanation. Thank you. Yes, I now understand it. It was the thunder.
Yeah, it must have been.
Sorry, Lois.
Oh, well, sorry, I'm just realizing that explains probably why they say let's fly to some strong castle. I was thinking of some castle. I mean, haven't they got one picked out? But that suggests that it's kind of a spur of the moment thing, which might be inspired by the thunder. Yeah, divine anger. Help! Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Sorry, Eric, then Sarah.
I was just going to point out. Well, basically, I just want clarification and also comments on. Well, the bit that Menelaus and Ulysses have is basically like, till we examine further circumstances, spare your severe censures, like basically shut up and help me look for what's happened, if I understand this correctly. And then Ulysses just goes, tis a business that least concerns us, but hey, whatever. I don't really like the guy, but okay, for his sake, because he was in charge. Is that what's happening, or is it just me?
What does everyone else think? Rachael, is that a reply? No. You're next anyway. Sarah.
I don't know. You could do it either way, I think. Yeah, it's a good point. I just wanted to that's driven it out of my head now. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, about the thunderclap. Yeah, the thunderclap is also like the fact that the thunderclap could be the motivation for them running away is actually it's more dramatic because we've had no interference from the gods in this play. The gods have been noticeably absent, and we kept saying this, there's no gods in this version. And yet, boom, here they suddenly are. Okay, they're not on stage, but suddenly it's like, oh yeah, we were here all the time, guys, and we just lulled you into a false sense of security. You thought you were, masters of your own fate. Boom. So actually, that could be. It would make it even more, compelling, the fact that there's this sudden intervention, and in the circumstances, it might be enough to make them turn tail and fly.
There was one more hand. Was it Rachael? Yes, please.
I think Elizabeth's had her hand up. I have something to say, but
sorry.
she's
Yes.
been waiting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth and then Rachael, and then I think we'll move on.
Thanks, Rachael. My comment was about the subtle balance of humor here, humor and pathos, kind of the interplay, and I thought it was very, very much down to a director and the actors to kind of get the balance right, because I just found this whole idea of Egistus being behind the bed sheets kind of thing really funny. I just thought it was just like kind of hilarious. And then when they go to stab him, I thought, oh, that's quite bad. But when the thunder strikes, I thought, oh, that was kind of funny as well. And then so I was just wondering that in the last few scenes, we've had a very delicate balance of humor and pathos, which I think is echoed when they find Agamemnon as well, and everybody goes, oh, horrid sight. I thought that was a bit melodramatic as well. So I thought that that the director and the actors would have to play this very, very carefully to make sure that people like Sinon and Thersites don't get too much of big laughs for their kind of asides compared to, you know, people like Orestes and their speeches.
Yeah, fair point. This constant balance in both of these plays between humor and tragedy and horror. Rachael, you want to?
Yeah, I was going to say about Pyrrhus again, how he approaches her with two other guys. The dynamic of a man approaching you alone romantically versus multiple men, you know, and then they're saying nasty things. There's a element of sexual harassment there, and I think it connects to some of our scenes yesterday where somebody says, "Okay, so you killed a woman and an old man." You know, that there's it speaks, I think, to his. You know, that spoke to his disreputable character in battle. And I think this talks about a sort of disreputable character in terms of romance, because there's much more of a power dynamic where even if Orestes is her cousin, there's some treating her as an equal. You know, she's royalty. And to approach her in the way that Pyrrhus is approaching her, he's not exactly approaching her in respect to her rank or with respect to rank.
It's also interesting the extent to which she's tainted by her mother's reputation.
Isn't it?
Mm.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the last of the plot. Is Act 5, Scene 2, as we're calling it. Enter Egistus, Clytemnestra with a strong guard.
Let none presume to dare into our presence or pass our guard, but such well known to us and to our queen.
The charge hath passed us round.
When sins of such high nature against us rise, 'tis fit we should be kept with heedful eyes.
Presume it, my Egistus. We are safe. The fort wherein we live, impregnable. We'll say we were surprised by stratagem, or should expose our lives unto the censure of law and justice. Even in these extremes, have I not the least fear of difficulty?
Your reason, madam.
Whom doth this concern but our own blood? Should Pyrrhus grow enraged, I have at hand my niece Hermione to calm his fury. What doth this belong to Ulysses or Aetolian Diomed? Are they not strangers? If it come in question by Menelaus, is he not our brother? Our sister Helen in his bosom sleeps, and can with him do all things. Fear not then, we are every way secure.
Oh, but Orestes, his eyes to me like lightning, and his arm upheaved thus, shows like Jove's thunderbolt aimed against lust and murder.
He's our son. The filial duty that's hereditary unto a mother's name prevents these fears. Electra's young, and childish Pylades swayed by his friends. It rests. Could we but work Helen and Menelaus to our faction, Egistus should be stated in Mycenae. We live his queen and bride.
Fears still suspicious.
Enter one of the guard.
Letter, sir.
From whence?
'Tis superscribed from the great Sparta's king and the queen Helen.
Who the messenger?
2 gentlemen who much importune you for speedy answer.
Bid them wait without. Now, fates prove but propitious. Then my kingdom I shall presume established.
There's no fear Orestes wants removed. And that's my charge, either by sword or poison.
See, fair queen, read what your brother writes. By this we are eternized in our happiness, and our lives rooted in sweet security.
The queen reads.
We not suspect you in our brother's death, a deed too base for any noble breast. Therefore, in this necessity of state, and knowing in this forced vacancy so great a kingdom cannot want a guide, the sovereignty we thought good to confer on Clytemnestra, or what substitute she in her best direction shall think fit. The united kings of Greece have thus decreed, your brother Menelaus,
We are happy'd ever.
a joy ratified, and subject to no change.
Call in the messengers. Orestes and Electra once removed, we have no rival, no competitor, therefore no jealousy at all.
None, none. The gods have with these kings of Greece agreed in his supplanting and in stating thee, my most dear Egistus.
Orestes and Pylades enter disguised are conducted in.
You the men?
Those whom the Spartan king made special choice of to trust this great affair with.
And you're welcome. But are you men of action? Such, I mean, as have been soldiers bred, whose eyes inured to slaughter and combustions, at the like would not change face or tremble.
They that to see legs, arms, and heads strewed on Scamander plain, kings by the common soldiers stewed in gore, and 3 parts hid with their emboweled steeds, shadowing their mangled bodies from the sun, as if above the earth to bury them. They that to see an Asian potentate killed at the holy altar, his own blood mixed with his sons and daughters, towers demolished, crushing whole thousands of each sex and age beneath their ruins, and these horrid sights lighted by scathed fires, they that have beheld these and more dreadful objects, can their eyes move at a private slaughter?
Ye are for us. Will you for hire, for favour or advancement, now wars are done, to be made great in court, and undertake that one man, easily spared amongst so many millions now surviving, that such a creature, no way necessary but a mere burden to the world we live in, he might no longer live?
But name the man, and as I love Egistus, honor you and all that glory in such noble deeds. Be what he will, he's lost.
Orestes, then.
Is there none than the world so well may spare as young Orestes? He to dot?
He kills Egistus, first discovering himself.
Vain world, farewell. My hopes withal no building long hath stood, whose slight foundation hath been laid in blood.
I'll die upon his bosom.
Secure the fort, my dear friend Pylades, and to your utmost pacify the guard. Tell them we are Orestes and their prince, and what we did was to avenge the death of their dead lord and sovereign.
Sir, I'll do it.
Exit.
Oh me! They're thinking to have catched in heaven and plunged into a hell of misery. Egistus dead! What comfort can I have? One foot enthroned and t'other in the grave.
Can you find tears for such an abject groom that had not for an husband one to shed? Oh, monstrous, monstrous woman is this carrion. Is this dead dog, said I. Nay, what's worse, worthy the sigh or mourning of a queen, when a king lies unpitied?
Thou a son!
The name I am ashamed of. Oh, Agamemnon, how sacred is thy name in memory, whose acts shall fill all foreign chronicles with admiration. And most happy he that can with greatest art but books thy deeds. Yet whilst this rottenness, this gangrened flesh, whose carcass is as odious as his name shall stinking lie, able to breed a pest, he with a princess tears to be embalmed, and a king lie neglected.
Bastard.
If I be, damned be the whore my mother, I am sure, nor my dead father had no hand in it.
Oh, that I could but lengthen out my years only to spend in curses.
Upon whom?
On whom but thee, for my Egistus' death?
And I could wish myself a Nestor's age, to curse both him and thee for my dead father.
Dost thou accuse me for thy father's death?
Indeed, 'twould ill become me being a son, but were I sure it were so, then I durst. Nay, more than that, revenge it.
Upon me?
Were all the mothers of the earth in one, all empresses and queens cast in one mold, and I unto that one a only son, my sword should ravish that incestuous breast of nature and of state.
I am as innocent of that black deed as was this guiltless gentleman here dead.
Oh, and all you powers of heaven I invocate, and if you will not hear me, let hell dot. Give me some sign from either fiends or angel. I call you both as testates.
Enter the ghost of Agamemnon, pointing unto his wounds, and then to Egistus and the queen, who were his murderers, which done, he vanisheth.
Godlike shape, have you, my father, left the Elysium fields, where all the ancient heroes line in bliss, to bring yourself that sacred testimony, to crown my approbation? Lady C?
See what? Thy former murder makes thee mad.
Rest, ghost, in peace. I now am satisfied, and need no further witness. Saw you nothing?
What should I see, save this sad spectacle which bloodshoots both mine eyes?
And nothing else?
Nothing.
Mine eyes are clearer sighted then, and see into thy bosom. Murderess.
How?
Incestuous strumpet, whose adulteries, when treason could not hide, thou thought'st to cover with most inhumane murder.
Meaning us?
Then, monster, thou didst first instruct mine hand how to write blood, when being a wife and queen, thou killedst a king and husband, and hast taught me, being a son, how to destroy a mother.
Wounds her.
Oh, most unnatural!
That I learnt of thee.
Unheard of cruelty! Oh, but heavens are just, and all remarkable sins punish with mock. One mischief still another doth beget. Adultery, murder. I am lost, undone.
She dies.
Being no wife, Orestes is no son.
Enter Cethus and Pylades with the guard.
The guard all stand for you, acknowledging Orestes, prince and king.
I now am neither.
What object's this? Queen Clytemnestra slain?
I hope no son's hand in it.
Orestes did it. The other title's lost.
All my plots take beyond my apprehension.
This is an age of nothing but portents and prodigies.
The father's hand as deep was in her death as was the son's. He pointed, and I struck. Was he not then as unkind to a wife as I was to a mother?
Oh, my friend, what have you done?
There is a plasma, or deep pit just in the center, fixed for parricides. I'll keep my court there, and Erinys, she, instead of Hebe, shall attend my cup. Sharon, the ferryman of hell, shall be my Ganymede.
The prince is sure distracted.
New project still for me.
I'll have a guard of furies which shall light me unto my nuptial bed with funeral tedies.
Here's.
The fatal sisters shall my handmaids be, and wait upon the fair Hermione.
Hermione, she is betrothed to Pyrrhus, and mourning for your absence, all the way unto the temple she will strew with tears.
Pyrrhus rape my dear Hermione. He that shall dare to interpose my purpose, or cross me in mine, hymeneal rights, I'll make him lie as flat as the cold earth, as doth this hound Egistus.
And I would so.
Would say I will. His father wore smocks, and in that shape raped diadamia. He shall not use my love so, my mother. Friend, take that object hence.
But you, Hermione.
My hands yet deep in blood, but to the wrist. It shall be to the elbow. Gods, nor men, angels, nor fury shall my rage withstand. Not the grave honor of the assembled kings, not reverence of the altar, nor the priest. No superstition shall my fury slay, till Pyrrhus from the earth be swept away.
Exit Orestes.
Pylades, attend your friend.
He's all my charge. His life, my life, and his are twins.
Their minds are countermined. Cethus, thy fall is either plotted or to blow up all.
Exit. Wow. Okay. So Clytemnestra and Egistus, having talked themselves into planning to murder Orestes, hire some murderers who turn out to be Orestes, who kills them.
Yeah.
Who could have guessed? What an extraordinary scene. Thoughts, please, fairly briefly. Yeah, no one? Just want to find out what happens next?
Kind of do. But it was great. It was amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Eric. And then Rachael.
I kind of wanted these characters to get murdered somehow, but I'm not entirely sure why. I just it's because it's still justice by violence, not just like justice is in revenge by violence, not like justice is in dragging someone in front of a court kind of thing. But I don't know if that would have made a difference, to be honest, because obviously we know that this is the mythology.
Rachael, then Lois, please.
I don't know. I was just gonna say that this is a really nice scene that he's laid out here. Because I wasn't expecting this from whatever last scene. I wasn't expecting the blood and the gore to come yet, or even for Orestes to be the one to make the first strike. I thought Clytemnestra and Agisthus would have gotten a little more bloodshed in before they were done in.
Okay. Lois?
Yeah, well, this all happens very fast because I think in the Greek versions of this, Orestes is still a baby when his father's killed, and he's kind of rushed away, and then he comes back years later, doesn't he, to avenge. But and also, if I remember rightly, he and Pylades arrive and say that their messenger is bringing news of Orestes' death in a chariot race, so that Clytemnestra and Agisthus naturally feel they're safe. I imagine Heywood got this idea from some of the revenge tragedies, like well, we haven't yet done the Revenger's tragedy, but there is a situation in that in which somebody actually does hire somebody to kill himself in another disguise. And there's also, I think, in the Malcontent, where Malevoli and Pietro are hired to kill each other and get together and explain this to each other. I mean, it's that kind of plot, more than I think it's more ingenious than the ones that Aeschylus and Sophocles and so on came up with.
Yeah, I think he would have had to be at least 10 in the Greek tragedies.
Mm-hmm.
He's a baby when they sail. Yeah, anything else? I don't want to rush you too much. I know I said we'll move on fairly quickly, but
Yeah, it's
yeah. Okay,
wait.
let's go then. Act 5, Scene 3. The bloodshed continues. Enter Sinon and Thersites.
My head aches, brother.
A bachelor and troubled with the Spartans' king's disease.
No, there's a wedding breeding in my brain. Pyrrhus the bridegroom. Thou strange creature, woman, to what may I compare thee?
Canst thou devise aught bad enough?
'Tis said they look like angels and of light. For the most part, such light angels prove 10,000 of their honesties will scarce weigh 11 drachmas.
Clytemnestra and Helen, for example.
Young Hermione has half face from both.
Sharp shrews knows they hate hereditary.
Thersites, I commend that fellow's wit, proffered a young wife, beautiful and rich. Only one fault she had, she wanted brain. Who answered in a creature of that sex, I desire more wisdom. I ne'er desire more wisdom than to know her husband's bed from another's.
I commend him, but 'tis not in Atreides' family to find out such a woman.
An altar set forth. Enter Pyrrhus, leading Hermione as a bride, Menelaus, Ulysses, Diomed, a great train. Pyrrhus and Hermione kneel at the altar.
See now, the sacred nuptial rites proceed. The priests prepare the altar.
Hymen, to whom my vows I consecrate as all my love. To thee, Hermione, whom in the presence of these Argive kings I here contract. Be thou auspicious to us, this flaming substitute to Saturn's son, within whose sacred temple we are roofed. And before all these high celestial gods and goddesses, in whose eyes now we kneel, especially you, Juno, queen of marriage, and fair Lucina, who have childbirth's charge, your favors I invoke. Let your chaste fires dry up this virgin's tears. Make her so fruitful that in her issue great Achilles' name and fame withal may live eternally. Proceed, priest, to your other ceremonies.
Enter Orestes, Cethus, Pylades with the guard, all their weapons drawn. Orestes runs at Pyrrhus.
Priam before the holy altar fell, before the altar bid thy life farewell. Rescue Hermione.
Achilles' son cannot revengeless die, then witness all. Blood must flow high where such great princes fall.
Orestes is in danger.
Save Prince Pyrrhus.
Cethus whispers with Diomed.
This plot was laid both for your life and kingdom.
She'll never bear it so.
Fight, Thersites, thy sword against me.
Curse upon the halls, upon all halls.
Confused scuffle in which Orestes kills Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus Orestes. Cethus wounds Pylades, Diomed, Menelaus, Ulysses, Thersites, etc. all fall dead, save Ulysses, who beareth thence Hermione, which done, Cethus riseth up from the dead bodies and speaks.
All asleep. And are these gossiping tongues that boasted naught save war and victory now mute and silent? Oh, thou ugly rogue, where's now thy railing? And thou, parricide, thy madness is now tamed. Thou needst no chains to bring thee to thy wits. Darkness hath done't. This Diomed, who dared to encounter Mars and said to wound fair Venus in the hand, where's your valor now? Agiale, unless some say she be better stored, is like to lie without a bedfellow. Rise, Pylades, and help to awake thy friend. What, doth your friendship sleep now? Menelaus, Helen's with a new sweetheart in the next room, wilt thou be still a cuckold? Wink at errors as panders do and wittles? Cethus now be crowned in history for a revenge which in the former world wants precedent. Methinks, as when the giants warred gainst heaven and dared for primacy with Jove himself, he darting gainst their mountains thunderbolts, which shattered them to pieces. The war done, I, like the great Olympic Jupiter, walk o'er my ruins, tread upon my spoils with majesty. I pace upon this floor, paved with the trunks of kings and potentates. For what else could have sated my revenge? This arch rogue fallen among them? He whose eyes had the preposterous virtue to fire Troy. Now is thy black soul for thy perjuries swimming in red damnation.
Sinon, who had before counterfeited death, riseth up and answereth.
Sir, not yet. All policies live not in Cethus' brain. Sinon hath share, and know if thou hast craft, I have reserved some cunning. See my body free and untouched from wounds.
Speak. Shall we then divide these dead betwixt us and both live?
If two suns cannot shine within one sphere, why then should two arch villains? Thou hast discovered projects almost beyond me, for which I have engrossed a mortal envy here. I will be sole, or none.
Cease then to be, that I may live without competitor. Cause Sinon's name be raised out of the world, and only mine remembered.
Thine's but frailty. My name shall be immortal, made more glorious in treading upon thee as thou on these. Stoop thou, my underling.
I shall still stand rooted.
They fight and kill one another.
And yet cut down by Sinon's hand.
I now am dust like these.
One single fight ends him, who millions ruined in one night.
Enter Helen, Electra, and Hermione.
Can you behold this slaughter?
Yes, and die at sight of it. For why should Helen live? Helen, the cause of all these princes' deaths, cease to lament. Reach me my glass, Hermione. Sweet orphan, do. Thy father's death already, nor will the fates lend thee mother long.
Enter Hermione with a looking glass, then exit.
Thanks, and so leave me. Was this wrinkled forehead, when 'twas at best, worth half so many lives? Where is that beauty? Lives it in this face, which hath set 2 parts of the world at war, been ruin of the Asian monarchy, and almost this of Europe? This, the beauty that launched 1,000 ships from Aulis Gulf, in such a poor repurchase now decayed? See, fair ones, what the little time can do. Who that considered when a seed is sown, how long it is ere to appear from the earth, then ere it stalk, and after it ere it blade, next ere it spread in leaves, then bud, then flower? What care in watering and in weeding took, yet crop it to our use, the beauty's done. And smell they scarce last betwixt sun and sun. Then why should these my blastings still survive, such royal ruins, or I longer live than to be termed Helen the Beautiful? I'm grown old, and death is age's due. When courtiers soothe, our glasses will tell true. My beauty hath made me pitied, and still loved, but that decayed. The world's assured hate is all my dower. Then Helen, yield to fate. Here's that. My soul and body must divide the guerdon of adultery, lust, and pride.
Strangles herself. Enter Ulysses.
In thee they are punished of all these princes and infinite numbers that opposed Troy, and came in Helen's quarrel, save myself, not one survives, thanks to the immortal powers. And I am now purposed to acquire by sea my kingdom and my dear Penelope, And since I am the man solely reserved, accept me for the author's epilogue. If he have been too bloody, 'tis the story, truth claims excuse, and seeks no further glory. Or if you think he hath done your patience wrong in tedious scenes by keeping you so long, much matter in few words, he bade me say, are hard to express that lengthen out his play.
Explicit actus quintus, here ends the whole history of the destruction of Troy. Finis.
Okay.
Wow. Deal to talk about. I'm going to ask you to combine your final thoughts with final thoughts on the work as a whole because we're running out of time. Sarah, final thoughts, please.
That was a banging play. They've both been pretty banging actually. Both parts, I really enjoyed them. I'm quite a sensitive little soul and I don't really like violence and things, but I absolutely loved the fact that everybody got slaughtered at the end. Because they'd all just been so horrible. And then the fact that Sinon pretends to be dead and gets up and he's like, yeah, I'm still here. And then him and Cethus have their little fight and kill each other. I'm like, that was hilarious. I must be twisted, but I enjoyed that so much. I do, however, feel slightly disappointed about Helen, because how do you strangle yourself? I assume she hangs herself, but like that just, yeah, I don't know. That just seemed a very, you go into a right carry-on moment there right at the end of the play, which I don't think it's supposed to do. But I don't know. I would have loved it if the play had ended with the women coming in and going, shit, and there being this kind of inference, at least, that the women were going to have to pick up the pieces and kind of, carry on and rebuild the kingdom and sort it all out. Of course, that is not what happens. Of course, Ulysses is going to have the final word. But I don't know. Heywood has deviated so much from the source materials in other places. I kind of would have liked that ending. But overall, I've just really enjoyed it. Again, like the end of part one, I felt that this final, well, not the final act in this case, but the final sort of 2 acts have been like a separate play. But I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with spin-off series. I enjoyed it, and it was sort of like the way it turned out, it actually turned out being a really nice counterbalance to all that death and destruction that we had in Troy by the end of Act 3. So yeah, just a thumbs up from me.
Okay. Eric, final thoughts.
I don't know, part of me is like, just cut the last Ulysses speech to make it less funny, because then you kind of have, like, if she strangles herself and then lights out, it's like everyone has died. And then, I mean, obviously Ulysses is away, but it just like sort of, I don't know, it's fascinating what that speech is doing. Just sort of, I'm not beautiful anymore, and all these people's deaths are my fault. Therefore, I don't know, it's just sort of the agency she showed at the beginning. She's taking it back, but in a way that you don't really want her to. Like yeah, I don't know. It's just a really great speech, and also the whole imagery of, blossoming beauty and all that stuff. Yeah, I mean, having read it cold, I was like, yeah, we need a better actor for this one, because you can imagine her sort of going, yes, and the glass, and longer hair, and yeah, I don't know, this play is doing so many things. I don't know if we have enough time to unpack all of them, but workshop, please.
Helen.
Yeah, I think that the 2 plays are brilliant, but they should have been 3. They should have been better organized. I mean, I keep banging on about this, and I know I must be very tedious. I mean, I loved it. It was the way, first of all, there is this totally Homeric, in the best sense of the word, cataclysmic event, and everybody gets killed. And then out of this pile of bodies, the two clowns or villains or whatever rise up and do the whole thing again, but this time for laughs. I mean, it's history repeating itself. The first time a tragedy, the second time a comedy, or the other way around, I forget which. But the no, I mean, I think it is, as everybody keeps on saying, interesting mainly because of the deviations from the sources, which are absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Good.
Lois.
I think some of the deviations from the sources are actually the result of us using so many sources. I mean, there was some tradition of Helen looking in a mirror and commenting on her lost beauty and so on, which is obviously a totally separate sort of image from some of the other stories about her. I think that's actually quite beautiful. And myself, I think I would be inclined to end it partway down through Ulysses' speech, maybe with, accept me for the author's epilogue. If ye have been too bloody, 'tis the story. Blackout.
Briony.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it as well. I am here for as much violence and bloodshed as we can, but I would really struggle if I was dealing with this play to not make the ending comical, because I found it hilarious. All these double deaths and then her strangling herself. It would be really difficult for me to tackle that sensitively. But there's just so much really nice language in this as well, especially on the more macabre subjects. That tends to have been where all the really juicy language has been.
Elizabeth.
Yeah. I really, really enjoyed part 1 and part 2 of the Iron Age. I liked it more when the gods didn't kind of just turn up every 5 seconds to kind of do some dastardly gods act. And I like that the most of the villainy comes from people who have their ugliness. It kind of seems to validate their inner ugliness. But I also was very excited when I thought Helen had the last word. I thought she was going to finish the play, and I thought, but then I was a little bit disappointed by how much Helen's final speech is about her outward appearance and not her inner monologue, in her inner interiority. I wanted to know more about, how she felt about the wars, not so much about how she felt about how she was looking and how she has kind of seemed to have decayed over time. But I thought it was interesting that Ulysses got the last word, in fact, and that the author's epilogue was kind of interwoven with his final speech. But yeah, I agree with everyone who said it's a cracking play. I loved the first and the second parts. I really enjoyed them.
Dan, final thoughts, please.
So I agree with everyone. I thought it was cracking. I don't know if this can be considered along with all the other ages, or which one, or we separate them all of his Iron Age, Brazen Age, Golden Age, and whatnot. But this is the kind of history I want to be watching on stage. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be humorous. I want to be drawn in. I want to be looking up afterwards, what really happened, because I'm drawn in. I like the characters. I find them despicable, and I want to see them get their comeuppance. This is what I want to see out of history plays. I don't want to see something really dragging and dramatic and everyone just, it's crying and blah, blah, blah. It makes me think that, once again, that Heywood is a really underrated playwright. We should be watching his plays. We should be seeing his Edward IV history plays, and we should be watching a cycle of all of these rather than the same War of Roses over and over and over again.
Rachael.
Yeah, same as everybody said. I thought this was fantastic. I think Helen, because she was the one that was looking at these plays and was doing all the behind the work on them, was championing them for a long time, and this has really lived up to that. the final speech by Helen, I really think Katharine Hepburn, I forget the name of the movie, you know, the one where she's playing the queen. That's such a moment for taking off all her jewelry, and you can do so much stage business. You can throw your jewels out to the audience. You can have all this fun with them. And, you know, the pulling on her face is really this, you know, what caused it all. You could do all this. And it's so wonderful too, because is this the face that split them, and you can pull on your face and make it look like blush or something like that, and all this. There's something about it that even if you were to imbue that with, you know, comedicness, it's playing against the real emotion of that. And to give that comedic to it kind of makes it a little sadder, you know, because what does all this beauty mean that they allowed it her for, and all this stuff they said about her? She, you know, that's not what she wanted. She never got what she wanted, even though that's that beauty is what people say they'll give women what they want if they're able to possess it from them. I think there's a lot more, and maybe what Elizabeth said to the lack of interiority there, I think maybe Helen feels that in the way that people have viewed her, is they haven't seen her interior, and she's trying to find it perhaps in herself. And her killing herself is her realizing she's lost it, in the same way that Ajax in the last play realizes that he's lost something that he didn't know he had.
Alan, final thoughts?
I must admit, I'm going against the mood of the room. I've not enjoyed it. I found the section that we've done today, which is effectively part 3 of the Iron Age, very unsatisfactory as a piece of theatre. And quite honestly, I don't think you could actually stage it these days without it becoming almost farcical, you know, with duels in which both characters die. And I mean, quite honestly, the image that was coming to my mind during Helen's final speech was the end of Dorian Gray.
Nice.
Lynn, final thoughts?
Yeah. You know, Alan said something, how could you do this without it being farcical? I'm not sure you want to avoid being farcical, to be perfectly honest. You know, Briony said something about be difficult to stage this sensitively. I'm not sure that's what I would go for. You know, like Sarah, when Electra and Hermione and Helen come in the end, I kind of wanted the ending where they look around and go, what's all this then? Sort of roll their eyes and like, men, fucking men, you know? But that's not what we get. But then we, you know, fast forward to Ulysses saying, oh, I know it's been pretty bloody, but that's the story. No, it's not. No, it's not. Orestes doesn't die. Menelaus doesn't die. Helen doesn't die. You know, so and Ulysses is sort of, you know, automatically an ironic character because he's notoriously deceptive and so forth. So I wonder if you could play Helen's final speech where she seems to be saying, this is all my fault. And the audience is going, no, it's not. No, it's not. I think it would take someone really skillful. And I also love Rachael's image. Of course, it draws on my favorite movie of all time of this sort of one-time great beauty past her prime, and the sort of tragedy of that. And I wish I'd been seen for more than just this beautiful object kind of, there you could do some stuff with that speech that would undercut what it seems to be saying about this is all my fault and I'm not even beautiful anymore. Yeah, it's not just you, it's part of a really toxic system.
Gina, final thoughts?
Yeah, I really didn't have too much to add this time around because I really agreed with the majority here. I liked this read. This is probably one of my favorite reads of the Iron Age, hand down. Like everyone else, I'd be very curious to see like this last scene on stage, just to see how it would be portrayed. But I think it's interesting. I agree about how when it comes to it kind of being a farce, I think it does work to its advantage. And just for me personally, I'm that kind of person that can get behind that dark, twisted humor if it's done right. And frankly, with something like this, especially focusing on the ending, I would, if I saw this on stage, I would remember it more set up how it is versus if it went more the, I guess, traditional, the melancholy route. Because at the very least with the farcical route, it's going to make me think, okay, what really happened here? And encourage me to go look and do my research versus kind of the melancholy. I'm more likely to assume what you're showing me is truth versus the farcical. So I really liked it. It definitely got me thinking about things, and I'm going to look up the history of this after we hang up the call because I do want to learn more now.
Okay. Well, this has been an extraordinary ride, and on the whole, most of us have absolutely enjoyed it. I, for one, am dying to do more with the Iron Age. What?
Eric.
Eric, did I forget you, Eric?
No, I just had an additional thought that I remembered. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry for interrupting your epilogue, good madam. Basically, I just remembered something that Dan said a few sessions ago. I think it was about Tamer Tamed, where we were all disagreeing about, what it was. And basically, I was thinking that if you do that monologue in a way that makes the audience uncomfortable with everything that's happened, it might just sort of make it more interesting as well. Sort of, you're all complicit in watching this as well.
Right. Thank you. Yes, I'll process that when I watch the video because I wasn't actually listening to you. I'm sorry. We're really out of time. I'm not going to let anybody else talk. I'm sorry. It remains only to thank the lovely, if somewhat slightly frustrated with me, readers. You've all been fantastic, and it appears so far against humanity and nature.